I decided to let the patrons vote on the next video topic, and of course they chose the one with 9 seasons and a movie, and a handful of specials. I'm mostly kidding, you're all a delight. But I will be seeing pastel horses in my nightmares for months to come. To be fair, I did bring this on myself, so I shouldn't complain. Now that I have, well, rewatched some of the series and caught up on the last few seasons, let's talk about Scootaloo from My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. Also, I'm just gonna go ahead and slap a spoiler warning on this video, though I guess if you're watching a video about a specific character without having watched the show she's from, you might not care about that. First things first, there is more in the world of Gen 3 MLP than just Scootaloo that I could talk about, Tempest being the most obvious example, and I will talk about that, just not right now. If I tried to talk about everything in one video, we'd be here for way too long, so I'm gonna start where the show itself started, with Scootaloo. I mean, I guess technically a certain grey Pegasus with strabismus actually showed up first.
Ditsy Doo accidentally went north to get the southern birds. Oh, that featherbrain! Didn't she learn her lesson last year when she went west?
But I'm saving her for later. Either way, Scootaloo was the first example of a disabled pony to actually take center stage, though we didn't immediately get explicit confirmation of that. By which I mean that she's introduced in the 12th episode of Season 1, and we don't actually get a moment where her disability is a focus until, Season 2, Episode 23. Even then, it's not actually addressed until the first CMC episode in Season 4. And here we run into a bit of an issue with representation that stays too much in the background, at least when it's applied to regularly appearing side characters instead of actual background characters. Namely, that it runs the risk of becoming so subtle it stops feeling like representation and starts feeling like bait. Scootaloo, at least while she's young, has a disability that is largely invisible. She's a Pegasus who can't fly, but design-wise, she looks very much like every other Pegasus her age we've seen. I say while she's young because when we see her as an adult, her wings haven't grown into the size of other adult Pegasi. In fact, the only other Pegasus with wings that small is Bulk Biceps, and his entire design is just a visual gag, so I'm not counting him as an actual example. So, for now, she's got an invisible disability, but it will become a visible disability later in life. The nature of invisible disabilities, kind of like the name implies, means if your character's got one, you can't rely on visuals to do the work for you. It takes more effort to write an invisible disability, not because they're inherently more complex or anything, but simply because there is no shortcut. Anyone can just stick a prosthetic on a character design and call it a day. Doesn't mean the resulting rep will be any good, but it'll be undeniably there. But if you want your character to have, for example, CFS, then you have to actually write that into their character. You can try to argue that the same would go for visible disabilities, and sure, it should, but it really doesn't. I've seen the X-Mansion depicted without ramps too many times to believe that. I think this is because of the nature of, well, invisible disabilities. Anyone attempting to write a character with one will likely be going into it already knowing at least something about disabled people and disability advocacy, even if they're not disabled themselves. Unless, of course, they've stumbled ass backwards into writing an invisible disability, because the setting is a fantasy world and the disability in question doesn't exist in real life. Like, say, a Pegasus who can't fly. So, how does all of this manifest with Scootaloo? Well, most obviously, she doesn't fly. She can hover a little bit, but that's about it. This, in large part, is why she's one of the few Pegasi with a permanent residence in Ponyville instead of Cloudsdale. The other part probably being that her father's an Earth pony, but don't worry about that yet because we didn't find out about that until the last season of the show. No, I'm not salty about it. Why would you possibly think that? How Scootaloo moves is inherently different from all other Pegasi in the show. Even Fluttershy, who tends to keep her hooves on the ground a lot, will still fly up to a high shelf or a nest. Scootaloo, however, because of her disability, navigates the world more like an Earth pony. That's not to say that she navigates it on a complete one-to-one, though. It's apparent through the examples of foals we've seen in the show that subspecies-specific magic does not mingle in kids where the parents aren't the same subspecies. Though it can apparently lay dormant in family lines for a while, until an Earth Pony couple have a pair of twins who are a Pegasus and a unicorn. I'm still low-key convinced the Cakes had to use a donor or something, because Mr. Cake's entire explanation was a whole load of horseshit.
Easy. My great-great-great-great-grandfather was a unicorn, and Cupcake's great-aunt's second cousin twice removed was a Pegasus. That makes sense, right?
But Mrs. Cake is an Earth Pony, and this hypothetical donor couldn't be both, so the point still stands. All this to say that Scootaloo has none of the natural strength, stamina, or nebulous connection to the land magic of an Earth Pony. She's light and agile and can walk on clouds without the use of a spell. Her body is built to fly, it just can't. Which is where we come to my favorite part of her design. It almost serves as a kind of mobility aid for her. I say almost because she obviously can't actually fly with it, but all of that Pegasus fleet-footedness and agility, she puts those to great use with her scooter. With it, she can match other Pegasi in speed, if not in elevation. As for how the show actually handles writing her disability, though, I've got a couple notes. Scootaloo makes her debut to the show as part of a trio of young fillies known as the Cutie Mark Crusaders, or CMC for short. She, Apple Bloom, and Sweetie Belle proceed from there to have various adventures and shenanigans for the purpose of finding their cutie marks. That's her primary focus as a character, and as usual, I much prefer when a disabled character's primary focus isn't their disability. However, that doesn't mean that when the show does get around to handling her disability, they do it well. The first time her disability has a tangible impact on the plot, it's because she fell out of a tree into a mud puddle and someone snapped a photo of it, which Diamond Tiara, the school bully, then proceeds to use as blackmail. Sure, Diamond Tiara had embarrassing photos of the other CMCs too, but Scootaloo's just feels worse. No kid likes to be embarrassed, but there's a world of difference between baby pictures or an embarrassing outfit and mocking a kid for their disability. Diamond Tiara really sunk to a new low with that one, not that the show ever actually seemed to realize that. All of them are embarrassed, but Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle aren't being mocked for things intrinsic to them that they cannot change. Of course, the next time Scootaloo's disability comes into focus again, in Season 4, it's once again Diamond Tiara being the worst about it.
Isn't it obvious? It is to us. In fact, it's obvious to every pony. You're showing all 3 types of Ponyville ponies, yet you have a Pegasus pony who can't even fly!
So, the first time we ever verbally acknowledge her disability 4 seasons into the show, it's because she's getting bullied for it. That admittedly doesn't feel great, but at least they handle it decently. At first, Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle are supportive of Scootaloo, but as Scoot spirals further into anxiety and starts to try harder and harder to fly, they do get annoyed with her. Something I might judge them for if they weren't literal children. Besides, Rainbow Dash already read them the riot act for it. She then goes to fetch Scootaloo and reassure her that the CMC's routine is awesome just the way it is, and she doesn't need to fly for it to be amazing. It's in this episode that we find out that, at this point in time, Scootaloo actually isn't sure if she'll ever fly or not. That feels a little odd to me, because we've seen literal infant Pegasi fly, and this is where we enter the wild speculation and headcanon zone. Remember how I said we don't find out Scootaloo's father is an Earth pony until season 9? Yeah, that's because we don't learn anything about her family until that episode. She never talks about them. She clings to Rainbow Dash as an older sister / mentor figure in a way that heavily implies that she lacks stable adult guidance in her life. And her reaction to Rainbow's parents? Eesh. A slight sidebar on Rainbow's parents, actually, because this really annoyed me. Rainbow Dash's parents are extremely overbearing. They love her and they try their best to be supportive, but they have gone so overboard it's not even funny. I mean, releasing unplanned fireworks at an airshow? Are you actually kidding me? They have drowned their daughter in so much overenthusiastic praise for every little thing that when she achieved her life's dream and became a Wonderbolt, she did not tell them, because she knew they would be weird about it. And she's fully within her rights to do so. Could she have been nicer about how she told them to back off? Yeah, sure, but she's not exactly in the wrong. It might feel a little ridiculous to complain about your parents being too supportive, but when it's this...
I, installed the sound effects myself. Pretty great, huh?
She was wearing it when she spoke her first words. And this broken lantern is from when she first learned to fly. And this bitten apple is from when she grew her first tooth. So many memories.
We've got turbulence!
Help! Where's it coming from? There! Oh no.
Yeah, no, I so see where she's coming from. But the show doesn't. It places her entirely in the wrong, and has her, and only her, apologize at the end of the episode. Because her parents did nothing wrong, right? It's not like they massively disrupted her life, endangered her teammates, and invaded her privacy or anything. Scootaloo, likewise, sees Rainbow as being entirely in the wrong. She idolizes Rainbow's parents, both for, well, being Rainbow's parents, and because she herself doesn't have a super close relationship with hers. Because they're always traveling for work. That's why we've never seen or heard anything from them. They are literally not in her life enough to make sure she gets to a doctor who could give her a diagnosis. She has aunts, but they don't live in Ponyville, so I feel entirely justified in thinking that whatever kind of childcare her parents organized for her just hasn't put in the effort to get her to a specialist. That's where Flight to the Finish leaves her. With friends and an older sister figure who support her, but still in that hellish in-between where she doesn't actually know what's going on with her own body. It's not a nice place to be, but the show is going to leave her there for the next 4 seasons. Arguably 5, considering Flight to the Finish was at the beginning of Season 4 and The Washouts is at the end of Season 8. Within those 4.5 seasons, there are 2 moments I particularly want to highlight because they're just a little bit heartbreaking to me. Both of these moments are times when she realizes she's dreaming, and her immediate first instinct is to begin flying. Usually I would be annoyed by the presence of the whole able-bodied within a dream thing, because it's rarely ever used for anything other than, oh, look at the poor disabled person pining for the impossible. But with Scootaloo, knowing that, as far as we know, she's still in a place where she doesn't know if she'll ever fly or not, and that she's a kid on top of that, it's so understandable. I highly doubt it was intentional, but this limbo the writers stuck her in, it's actually so real and horrendous to be in. Because she doesn't have a diagnosis, she's literally stuck in place. She has no roadmap to follow, no idea what her future might look like, or what she should be doing. Should she be on a PT regimen to strengthen her wings? Is there any hope she'll ever fly more than the hovering she can currently do? Or should she begin working towards self-acceptance and living with the fact that she won't? She doesn't know, and the people who should be fighting for answers for her are off on the other side of the world because that's what their jobs demand of them. It's actually so messed up if you think about it for more than 2 seconds. But the show doesn't leave her in limbo forever. Granted, it doesn't ever actually show us how she came to terms with that she'll never fly, but towards the end of Season 8 we get the episode The Washouts. In this episode, Scootaloo has found a new fixation in a stunt troupe called The Washouts. Rainbow is a little jealous and a lot worried that Scootaloo might find someone else to look up to, but to her credit, she tries her best to be supportive, right up until it becomes clear just how dangerous the washout stunts actually are, and that they want to involve Scootaloo in their routine. Things come to a head, and Scootaloo says this.
But based on your definition of what makes some pony great, I have bad news. I'll never be the best of the best or a Wonderbolt, because I can't fly! Is that what you wanted to hear?
That's a real kick in the pants to Rainbow, and something I honestly didn't expect the show to pick up on given how they've handled Scootaloo's disability so far. She idolizes Rainbow Dash, the best flyer in Equestria. By nature of Rainbow's own accomplishments and interests, she's very focused on flying and the Wonderbolts. Her tunnel vision on that stopped her from realizing that by lifting aerial acrobatics and such so high, she was inadvertently pushing Scootaloo down. At some point between Flight to the Finish and this episode, Scootaloo obviously either got a diagnosis or independently accepted that she'd never fly. For the sake of my own sanity, I choose to believe the former. However, with that future set in stone, it also forced her to realize she'd never be exactly like her idol. That's a hard thing to accept, especially for a child. Of course, the episode ends well with Rainbow apologizing and the two reconciling and Scootaloo being assured of her worth by those around her. It's a fine end to the episode, but it's also the very last time Scootaloo's disability is explicitly addressed in the series. She's accepted her disability, gotten reassurance from her older sister figure, wrap it up, we're done here. No need to ever mention it again. Not that I'm exactly surprised. I can count the number of times her disability's been explicitly addressed on one hand, across 9 seasons. True, the CMC are side characters, but they do still feature in a fair number of episodes. It's just a little disappointing, is all. Scootaloo, in concept, is a great character. They just didn't do anything with that. Not really. I get that coming to terms with her disability feels like a nice bookend to her arc, but to me, that's only the beginning. And besides, we didn't even get to actually see her come to terms with her disability. We saw Rainbow realize how her actions were affecting Scootaloo once Scootaloo came to terms with her disability at some point off screen. Scootaloo's special talent in life, alongside Sweetie Belle and Apple Bloom, is helping ponies with their cutie marks. How easy would it be to extend that to Scootaloo helping another disabled pony? Either someone who, like her, has been disabled their entire life, or someone who's become disabled in a way that seems to be interfering with their purpose. It seems like such an obvious next step for her to me, to take that self-acceptance and turn it into another tool in her arsenal when it comes to her special talent. But we don't get that. If we'd gotten an episode like The Washouts earlier in the series, I really feel like they could have done so much more with Scootaloo than they did. Too late for that now, though. In conclusion, Scootaloo has so much untapped potential as a character, it just kinda makes me sad to think about. They really could have had something magical here. Instead, what we're left with is kinda meh. I can see the ideas they were trying to play with, and there are good bones there, but that alone is not enough to drag them over the finish line. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, consider liking it and maybe subscribing. A massive thank you to the Entmoot, Alice Autumn. I will be back here on an upcoming Thursday. Bye!